Good evening and most welcome to an evening lecture. We will continue with where I left off at 1371 in the Stephen Rosen article, and I'm presently at page 251. The schematic representation of the Klein bottle provided by figure 4b shows that it possesses the curious property of passing through itself. When we consider the actual construction of a Klein bottle in three-dimensional space by joining one boundary circle of a cylinder to the other from the inside, we are confronted with the fact that no structure can penetrate itself without cutting a hole in its surface. An act that would render the model topologically imperfect, simply discontinuous. So the Klein bottle cannot be assembled effectively when one is limited to 3 dimensions. Mathematicians observe that a form that penetrates itself in a given number of dimensions can be produced without cutting a hole if an added dimension is available. The point is imaginatively illustrated by mathematician Rudolf Rucker. He asks us to picture a species of flatlanders attempting to assemble a Möbius strip, which is a lower dimensional analog of the Klein bottle. Rooker shows that since the reality of these creatures would be limited to 2 dimensions, when they would try to make an actual model of the Möbius strip, they would be forced to cut a hole in it. Of course, no such problem with Möbius construction arises for us human beings. Who have full access to 3 external dimensions. It is the making of the Klein bottle that is problematic for us. Requiring as it would a 4th dimension. Try as we might, we find no 4th dimension in which to execute this operation. However, in contemporary mathematics, the fact that we cannot create a proper model of the Klein bottle in 3-dimensional space is not seen as an obstacle. The modern mathematician does not limit himself to the concrete reality of space, but feels free to invoke any number of higher dimensions. Notice, though, that in summoning into being these extra dimensions, the mathematician is extrapolating from the known 3-dimensionality of the concrete world. This procedure of dimensional proliferation is an act of abstraction that presupposes that the nature of dimensionality itself is left unchanged. In the case of the Klein bottle, the fourth dimension required to complete its formation remains an extensive continuum. Though this higher space is acknowledged as but a formal construct, the Klein bottle per se is regarded as an abstract mathematical object, simply contained in this hyperspace, whereas the sphere, torus, and Möbius strip are relatively concrete mathematical objects. Since tangible perceptible models of them can be successfully fashioned in 3 dimensions. We see here how the conventional analysis of the Klein bottle unswervingly adheres to the classical formulation of object in space. Moreover, whether a mathematical object must be approached through hyperdimensional abstraction or it is concretizable, the mathematician's attention is always directed outward toward an object, toward that which is cast before his subjectivity. This is the aspect of the classical stance that takes subjectivity as the detached position from which all objects are viewed. Viewed here, subjectivity as such is never open to view. My comment, it's shut out of view. It's not part of what could be observed, analyzed, or thought about. Thus, the posture of contemporary mathematics is faithfully aligned with that of Descartes and Newton in whatever topic it may be addressing. always there is the mathematical object, a geometric form or algebraic function. The space in which the object is contained, and the seldom acknowledged uncontained subjectivity of the mathematician who is carrying out the analysis. Now, in the study of topology, Barr advised that we should not be intimidated by the higher mathematician. We must not be put off because he is interested only in the higher abstractions. We have an equal right to be interested in the tangible. The tangible fact about the Klein bottle that is glossed over in the higher abstractions of modern mathematics is its whole. This is whole with an H, my comment. Because the standard approach has always presupposed extensive continuity, it cannot come to terms with the inherent discontinuity of the Klein bottle created by its self-intersection. Therefore, all too quickly, higher mathematics circumvents this concrete whole by an act of abstraction in which the Klein bottle is treated as a properly closed object embedded in a hyperdimensional continuum. Also implicit in the mainstream approach is the detached subjectivity of the mathematician before whom the object is cast. I suggest that by staying with the whole, we may bring into question the classical intuition of object in space before subject. Let us look more closely at the hole in the Klein bottle. This loss of continuity is necessary. one certainly could make a hole in the Möbius strip, torus, or any other object in three-dimensional space, but such discontinuities would not be necessary inasmuch as these objects could be properly assembled in space without rupturing them. It is clear that whether such objects are cut open or left intact, the closure of the space containing them will not be brought into question in rendering these objects discontinuous. We do not affect the assumption that the space in which they are embedded is simply continuous. Very important here, my comment is, it is not brought into question the space that surrounds. It is out of inquiry, out of understanding. End of my comment. Thus, for the Klein bottle to be accommodated, it seems the three-dimensional continuum itself must in some way be opened up. Its continuity opened to challenge. Of course, we could attempt to sidestep the challenge by a continuity maintaining act of abstraction, as in the standard mathematical analysis of the Klein bottle. Assuming we do not employ this stratagem, what conclusion are we led to regarding the higher dimension that is required for the completion of the Klein bottle? If it is not an extensive continuum, what sort of dimension is it? I suggest that it is none other than the dimension of depth adumbrated by Merleau-Ponty. Depth is not a higher dimension or an extra dimension. It is not a fourth dimension that transcends classical three-dimensionality. Rather, as the first dimension, depth constitutes the dynamic source of the Cartesian dimensions, the natal space and matrix. Therefore, in realizing depth, we do not just move away from classical experience, but move back into its ground, where we can gain a sense of the primordial process that first gives rise to it. The depth dimension does not complete the Klein bottle by adding anything to it. Instead, the Klein bottle reaches completion when we cease viewing it as an object in space and recognize it as the embodiment of depth. It is the Kleinian pattern of action, as schematically laid out in figure 4b, that expresses the in-depth relations among object, space and subject, from which the old trichotomy is abstracted. As an idealization. So it turns out that, far from the Klein bottle requiring a classical dimension for its completion, it is classical dimensionality that is completed by the Klein bottle, since in its capacity as the embodiment of depth. The Klein bottle exposes the hitherto concealed ground of classical dimensionality. Here is the key to transforming our understanding of the Klein bottle so that we no longer view it as an imperfectly formed object in classical space, but as a dynamic ground of that space. We must recognize that the hole in the bottle is a hole in classical space itself. A discontinuity that, when accepted in dialectical relation to continuity rather than evaded, leads us beyond the concept of dimension as Cartesian continuum to the idea of dimension as depth. make a little summary here. Let's see if I can get that eye leveled. Once more, Stephen Rosen shows his absolute clearness when it comes to laying out the gestalt that is behind the classical formula. Especially the understanding that no added dimension is necessary. The one dimensionality, something we call the absolute prior, the foundational matter / mind before they collapse into either matter or mind. And I would like to add to this undefined and definition. We can say that matter is undefined, and our thinking of it gives it a certain definiteness. This is very associative to the Bohemian project of seeing the world coming from the hollow movement and in its wake carrying explicitness and implicitness. The thing laid out in the open for our observation, or being what is observed, the explicit, and what is embedded in the hiding, covered, the implicit, and the very movement in between them that causes everything into becoming. In that border between the unborn and the born, this is where everything is happening. The one dimensionality is where all the depth is coming, and the dimension are born out of this depth, or they are derived from that. But the three dimensions, the orthogonal directions, so to speak, x, y, z, do not contain all what the before is. They are incomplete. Therefore, the classical formula is in a way a random take on reality. And that randomness makes our understanding of everything very down to chance. It's not clear, it's not readily understood. I think Wittgenstein would say it's not precise enough. What is precise enough? Well, it's just the accurate timing and placing, but not the sharpest definition. That is the classical formula. When you add things in the mistaken belief that you will add sharpness. Very seldom by adding you get sharpness, although modern day intellectualism is words upon words upon words upon words. I don't know, maybe there's a comment from my dear colleague here if he's not too tired. I will give you some light before you start, so you could be seen.
Hello, hello.
Give me a second here. There you are. Now.
Let me give a perspective to this problem. I could compare with ancient manuscripts. So the ancient Greeks and Romans, they wrote sentences without spaces between words, and they did so until the Pope Gregory the Great in the 6th, 7th century. And we have so far seen that as an advantage also for the Greeks and Romans, because it makes reading difficult. That is, it activates the right side of the brain, and it allowed for more ambiguities. But that now I realized, reading Rosen, that it could also have its backside, because it could also be a symptom of the horror vacui that the Greeks and perhaps also Romans had. That is fear for the empty space. So they filled everything with words and words without spaces. So this everything has its good negative and good side. So because Rosen emphasizes the whole, and the whole, what is a whole? Is like an empty space between words, and we can easily think that in linguistic terms that the empty space between words is meaningless, because it doesn't create meaning really. But we know that we need space between words, otherwise there is no sense. So we need, this is a homage. So Rosen's paper is a homage to the whole, that is whole with a beginning with an H. We need the whole with an H, that is the whole. I would say also, I would also compare the whole with an H to imperfections. That is, we need the imperfections. What I was thinking about. Yes, so the important thing is that the classical mathematics or the Newtonian world picture is that the space is continuous. Everything is, the space is similar. But the whole, the word with the H, it creates imperfection, so to say. Imperfection with a scare quotation marks. We need the whole to have the wholeness with a W. So I think actually, so everything has its negative or good side. So we need also the whole with an H between words. We need this space to make sense to things. So I'm very grateful for Rosen's paper, and I could read the key sentence. The tangible fact about the Klein bottle that is glossed over in the higher abstractions of modern mathematics is its whole with an H. Because of the standard approach has always presupposed extensive continuity, it can come to terms with the inherent discontinuity of the Klein bottle created by its self-intersection. So Hans, do you want to add something?
Yes, made me think of the Roman columns that are absolutely filled up. They are a dense hole that defy the horror vacui. So there is the point there. But it also gave me another idea, and that the spaces between the words are coming in a linearity. They are a bit mechanically, whereas the holes in, for example, the letter P or the letter B are more happenstantial. They look more random, more lively, and the spaces between words are more mechanical. They have to come there in a certain pre-arranged rhythm. Yeah, it's both-sided here. There are no simple solutions, it seems. Very interesting. Thanks for the point. And thank you all for listening. It was very pleasurable. Have a very good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Hans and Rosen.